Hey, so excited to have you join us right here at Exotic Car Hacks with this ideology of how much does it really cost to own an exotic car. Listen, over the last 20 years as an avid car collector, this is the most asked question. What does it really cost? What are the dollars associated with owning a luxury or exotic car? What are the things you should know? Now, in this particular video, I'm going to break down how it's actually possible to own an exotic car for less than $100 or $200 a month. And I know, it sounds pretty ridiculous because in any kind of math, regardless of how you look at it, it would be impossible to actually buy a $100,000 vehicle and have it equal to $100 or $200 a month, right? Ideally, this type of ideology is that this is either a scam, a rental, or the money's offsetted elsewhere. But I want to assure you that there's so much power in understanding creative financing and understanding how your view of money is what's allowing you not to see this, and it's right in plain sight. So before we understand this number, let's understand the way we typically calculate what something is actually worth. And more importantly, what does it actually cost? We typically look at these things based on what we consider a monthly payment, right? Every single person watching this video at some point or another has either had a monthly payment for something or a monthly payment for a car, right? You've probably looked at it and said, what does this car cost? You've put it in a car loan calculator, you've checked over 5, 6, or 7 years, and you've said to yourself, what can I afford this month? Conventionally, you have been brainwashed to actually believe that your monthly payment on something is the same as your cost of ownership, and it couldn't be further from the truth. So let's use a simple example of that ideology. Let's say you buy a $50,000 car, $50,000, which is an average luxury car out there, and your monthly payment on that $50,000 is $1,000 a month, okay? Now, $1,000 a month means that after 3 months, you have basically paid $3,000, which constitute of some interest and some principal, right? So some of that money went to your principal, some of my money went to your interest. In 3 months, you change your mind and you trade your car in, and you basically trade it in for $40,000. The dealer obviously doesn't want to buy it back for what you paid. How much money did you lose? Did you actually lose $3,000 for your 3 payments, or did you lose more than that? So reality is you lost $10,000 plus the interest on those 3 payments. So realistically, let's just use a round number here just for the argument of this video. You've lost $11,000 in 3 months driving a car, regardless of what that monthly payment was. Now, typically as individuals, we have come to think this way, and we just forget this part. Because when we buy something, we typically don't think of its exit. Instead, we think of what we want. Think about a wedding. Maybe you're about to get married to someone, and you're really excited about that marriage. Will you ever regret spending $50,000 on a wedding? Of course not. When do you regret it? At the time if you end up getting divorced, because the memory fades away and the cost comes to light. Oh my God, that was such a waste of money. I could have used that for something else. No one who's had an eventful, exciting relationship 20 years later regrets having spent $50,000 on their original wedding. They don't until it goes sour. And this is what the industry has basically conditioned us to do. It is to forget this exit number and to really focus in what we can afford based on what we want. So they've told us if something is worth what it's worth and you can afford its payment, it's depreciating anyway. So this isn't our fault. This is basically your own fault because that's a depreciating asset. Now, what they haven't told us is that at the $50,000 line right here, when we bought that car, $5K was a margin to the dealership that they had to make a profit. And $5K on top of that was a dealer pack that they also put into the car to make sure they make even more profit. What they didn't tell us is the day they sold us the $50,000 car, 20% of that went into their pocket. So they technically sold us a $40,000 car for $50,000. So when we went to resell it 3 months later, well, it was only worth $40,000. It wasn't that the car depreciated, it's that we were ignorant about how that number came to be. And on top of that, we were at some point shown some kind of fake invoice telling us that this is the invoice of what the dealership makes from the car or pays, giving a mere $5,000 profit on a $300,000 car, making us feel like we got a great deal because we bought it at invoice. What if I told you that some dealers are offering $200,000 discounts on brand new Rolls Royces or $100,000 off on Aston Martins? You would say that doesn't make sense. How can someone get that kind of discount? Are you buying a salvage car? What if I told you that's happening at every dealership in the country and you're just not seeing it because they don't want the public to know? My argument for this video is a change in proposed mindset to stop looking at the world of cars through the lens of a monthly payment because it's quite painful and more importantly, it's quite misleading. Because, let me give you a perfect example. In this particular case right here, what if you would have bought the car for $40,000 and 3 months later would have changed your mind and gotten rid of the car for $40,000? How much money would you have lost? $11,000 or just the bare interest on the car? Which means that you could have driven that car for less than $300 a month. Why aren't we thinking about that specific equation? And I'm going to show you how your mind has been duped because the government is really smart at doing this. Here's a mortgage. When you go to buy a mortgage, when you go to buy a house, you typically never think of the monthly payment and you stretch as far as you can to get the best house possible. The reason you do that is because in your head, it's increasing in equity, values go up, like up, right, not down, and with your house, you have a deduction for your taxes. So if you think about these three things, buying a home is a great way to park money. One of the things that we're not talking about enough here in the world of exotic cars is that exotic cars and luxury cars are also a great place to park money as long as they've already depreciated enough. If you think of the average exotic car, it depreciates about 30% in its first 2 years. And some others an additional 18% a year, which is pretty spectacular of a drop, right? What they don't tell you is by the third year, that 50% depreciation is it. And the car retains roughly 50% of its value over the next 10 years before either appreciating or going down based on the additional mileage and condition deteriorating, not so much the value of the car itself. So this simply tells us that if I bought a $200,000 car 3 years later at $100,000, in 5 years from now, it's likely that that same car will be worth $100,000. Now, that's right, it is not appreciating like a house necessarily, but something pretty exciting happens here. Because you see, we're going to make monthly payments regardless, and let's face it, you want a luxury and exotic car. I love luxury and exotic cars. That's why I have so many of them. When we make payments on that $100,000, one thing we're not paying attention to is we may get a payment that tells us it's $1,500 a month, and we may say, well, that's what it costs to own a car because it's $1,500 a month. That's what the payment is. And that's probably why, to this day, some of you have never owned an exotic car, because that seems like a lot of money to waste, and that's not even accounting insurance or cost of repairs. So think about the number. This keeps going up. Now you're talking about $2,500 a month? Are you crazy? That's like $30,000 to $40,000 a year just for a car? That's stupid, right? But you see, that's the mindset that has prevented you from achieving your dreams, is that you're misunderstanding that very same concept. Just because you're spending $1,500 a month doesn't mean your car is costing you $1,500 a month. And let's do the math. If I was to make let's say even 20 payments on this $1,500 a month, I would basically have paid $30,000. Okay, $30,000 of payments. That means that my actual loan would now roughly, now I know there's some interest, let's actually adjust that, and let's say I will owe $75,000 roughly still of payments, right? Some money went to interest. We can even make it worse. Let's even get worse. Let's say $7,000 of that went to interest, okay? $7,000 of that dollar, okay? All right. 7,000 went to interest, 33, that means 23,000 came, right? 23,000 came out of that actual equity, and the rest was interest. That leaves me a $77,000 balance on my loan. What happens when I sell the car that I paid $100,000 for $100,000 after I have $77,000 in owed debt? I get back in my pocket $23,000 in equity. Now, if I look at those 20 payments I've made, 20 months I've driven this car, and my true cost was $7,000 total divided by 20. That means that that very same car has cost me $350 a month in true cost. Now, the argument is, well, that's great. That's a great number, and I get that. But there's two key elements here that you have to pay attention to. The first one is, how do I buy the right car that's already depreciated that much and ensure it doesn't depreciate more? Because I have to know what to buy here. And where are you getting these deals? I'm not seeing this on the internet. I don't understand. Well, first off, this is exactly what we teach at Exotic Car Hacks, how to select the car and know exactly which car to go after and which models, which options, which years, etc. One. Secondly, I think that's really important to point out here. This isn't new. History has been around for 20 plus years, so we have to pay attention to that and understand that this isn't a new concept that just came out yesterday. This concept has been around for quite some time. It is new to you. It is not new to what's happening in the world out there. So this is important. That's the second thing. And the big piece that you're going to tell me about right now is you're going to say, well, what about this? And what about this? Because all I know is it costs a lot to fix, and the other thing I know is the insurance is quite high. So what I'm going to tell you is something you're probably not going to believe. In Florida, to insure a Kia for a 25-year-old with a decent driving record, meaning no major accident or anything, it would cost you roughly $900 to $1,500 every 6 months. Again, something I want you to understand. This is the difference in how we think differently. Even if this is your insurance payment, and let's say to do a Lamborghini, let's say Gallardo, or actually let's use something even more realistic, a BMW M5, which is about 4 times as much or 5 times as much as the Kia new in its used format, this very same dollar right here would rise to $2,100. So the real difference here is a change of $600 to $1,000, which means the real ownership difference is would $100 a month prevent you from, in insurance, prevent you from driving your dream car? Would $100 extra in insurance a month prevent you from driving your dream car? And in most cases, the answer is no. But yet, we don't think about it that way. We tend to think about it as this is a Kia, this is a BMW, and that's a big payment, and that's a small payment. But we're not doing the math, and this is why this matters a lot. When we break it down in cost of ownership, it's not that bad. So the argument is, how is that possible? That doesn't make sense. Well, it does for a couple of reasons. The majority of your insurance focuses on what we call liability, which means your liability policy is much greater than the deductible on your actual exotic. There is an actual way to lower the cost basis of the insurance part of your insurance policy as it pertains to your car because it's a more expensive car, but your liability is the piece that doesn't change. So if your liability here on the Kia, that policy is $700 of the $900 or the $1,500, that policy on the M5 is also $700. So what I'm saying is the only real difference between the policies here is if this is $1,500 and $700 of that is that means that roughly about $800 or so of that money, right, is for the car itself. The $700 is for you as an individual. And here the difference in that is what's actually for the car itself. But there are ways to actually lower that payment too, as we teach you in Exotic Car Hacks, because insurance companies actually really like exotic and luxury cars because they're not daily driven as much as regular Kias, and they haven't been as in many accidents because the volume of cars is significantly less. So the accident damage rating of these cars is typically lower than these more commonly found cars that get in more accidents on the road. So the way insurance works actually in many cases will put you in a more favorable place having a BMW over a Kia, because while the car is more expensive, the car is also safer in many ways than the Kia, larger, and basically does a better job at protecting you, lowering some of these other components. So it is literally the same math, and the argument again is, would $100 a month prevent you from getting your dream car? So let's address the last elephant in the room, which is the repairs. The majority of people think that buying a used car entails paying out of pocket for repairs. But most people don't realize that most used luxury and exotic cars under CPO or factory warranty. Now, I know this doesn't make, how is that possible? Well, factory warranty and CPO warranties on exotic cars is very different than regular cars. CPO warranties are usually 1 to 2 years from the date of purchase of the car, not just an extension of the original factory warranty. This means that even if you're buying a 7, 8, 9-year-old car, it's possible to buy it under warranty. In addition to that, CPO and warranty programs are basically the same as your factory warranty. So as long as you do your oil services, which can be done outside of the dealership at a fraction of the cost, I have an entire resource section in Exotic Car Hacks of shops that are qualified all over the US, Canada, and even the UK that can show you where you can basically get oil service on your car for 1/4 of what the dealership charges by the same employees of the dealership. So it's not like it's an outside random little shop that's working on your $200,000 car. It's the same people. They're just charging much less. And the argument is, most people, again, believe that if they don't use the actual dealership for their service, then their warranty is void. And again, that isn't true either. A lot of these misconceptions have prevented you from owning the car of your dreams. So I ask you the ultimate question. If you knew that owning the car you've always wanted, that you've thought you had to save money for 10 years, would cost you less than $500 a month in cost and insurance, would you still be watching this video, or would you be driving your dream car? If you want more content like this again, click the link below and join Exotic Car Hacks.